Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 112 of Songs of Selah here on the 17 Numa radio channel. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and it is Monday, June 29th, 2020. Coming up in just a bit, I'll be joined by tonight's guest, Damian Rucci. Damian is a poet, a performer, a host, and a man of many rants, among other skills. So I'm looking forward to speaking with him and hearing some selection of his poetry here tonight. Please do stay tuned for that conversation just around the bend. Phone lines will be open throughout the show at 646-668-8757. If anyone would like to call in with questions for Damian, you're more than welcome to do so. And to kick the festivities off tonight, I'm going to hand things over to Mihaela Melnick for her weekly edition of Mickey's Poetry Cafe, with a rendition of her piece, Vibrations in the Wind. Take it away, Mickey.
Hello, Thomas, and all you beautiful people. I'm glad that you found a moment to stop by for a poem. I'll be very brief this time, because today here is such a sultry day, and I'm going to go swimming with the dolphins. They are waiting for me. Well, they're more in my dreams than in the sea, but I can't disappoint them even there. So I'm going to read you a very short poem. I can see your face, prisoner in my palm, through the memory of the touch, your chin, your lips, your tongue, those eyes, the wolfish gaze, careless at the dying sun. Your fingertip running along my spine, and I forget to exist for myself. My hands are now your hands. Your skin is now my skin. Vibrations in the wind. Thank you for stopping by, and catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Alright, welcome back to the show. Once again, that was Mihaela Melnick with Mickey's Poetry Cafe, straight from the heart of Italy and Rome. That was her poem, Vibrations in the Wind, which is an excerpt from a collaborative book the two of us have been working on the past few months. More details coming up about that project later this year. I do encourage listeners to please take a moment and subscribe to the 17 Numa radio channel. It's easy to do and it's free. All you have to do is click the follow button found on the page where this episode is streaming, and that'll get you signed up. And a reminder to everyone that all past episodes of Songs of Selah can be accessed or downloaded for later listening from the archive here on the channel or from the Songs of Selah page at 17numa.com. Thank you to everyone who spreads the word about this program and shares episode links. Your support is always greatly appreciated. I believe that'll just about wrap things up here at the top of the show. Let's go to a music break now and then come back on the other side with tonight's guest, Damian Rucci. Stay tuned.
not trying to kill you. It's just proof of life, not trying to kill you. One day at a time. Sure she'll be with me until the very end. There are only so many ambulances. Less you ask, the more you see. There are only so many accidents. It's the universe, nothing's free. Trying to kill you. It's just a move out of life. Trying to kill you. One day at a time. Trying to kill you. One day, one day. Oh, life can be so unwell. Oh,
back to Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. If there's anyone interested in appearing as a guest on a future episode, please feel free to get in touch with me via email at 17numa@gmail.com. It's 17numa@gmail.com. Or reach out and connect with me on any of the social media platforms, and I'd be more than happy to get you set up for an episode later this year. And tonight's guest, Damian Rucci, is the author of 5 books of poetry, and his work has recently appeared in Beatdom, As It Ought to Be magazine, Cultural Weekly, and basements and coffee shops around the country. He is the founder of the Poetry in the Port reading series and is probably banned from your local bar. Damian, thanks so much for coming on tonight. How are things going with you?
Thanks for having me, Scott. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, right on, man. Good to talk to you. How are things up there in the New Jersey area of late?
Well, it's pretty much, I never thought I'd get to see the end of the world, so it's kind of a beautiful experience. I was in Missouri for the last year at a writing residency, 2 hours south of St. Louis. I'm talking about like real rural country, okay? Like 1,500 people over the span of 10 miles, more cows than people, the real country experience. So when the coronavirus started to kick off, I was off social media. I took off social media for over a year, and I didn't know what was going on. I would just had a little supermarket job out there, and I had a studio that the residency gave me, and I just worked and wrote poetry and partied. So I came into work the one day, and they're like, "Hey, you sure you want to go home at the end of your residency? Have you seen what's going on in New Jersey?" And I said, "No. Like, what's going on?" And so it dawned on me how severe the coronavirus had grown, because I saw a news article in December, and it was in China. And I was like, that's terrible. I feel terrible for the people, but it's no big deal. And then I came back to New Jersey on, I think it was April 7th, and it was a complete different, experience, The whole world changed. How you doing down in Georgia?
Oh, I mean, things are pretty safe down around this area. Even Atlanta hadn't been hit too hard, but sounds like you came back right in the middle of the pandemic, April. I was like, what, a month and a half into it, and y'all were hit.
Yeah.
There in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, that was kind of the epicenter of the whole thing.
It was a cultural shock, because it just shows you how quickly life can change on a dime, where who would have thought we'd be in this area where, the coast has such innovation and production, and it's, opportunity. Growing up in New Jersey, I sit on the beach and I look across the Hudson, and I could see New York City, and it's like this shining beacon of human progress. And I'm like, wow, that's the land of opportunity. And all that opportunity's gone, right? In a span of a month's time, it's just completely changed shape. And it's been part of me. I have, my heart goes out to those people who are out of work like I am. My heart goes out to the families affected from the sick. But part of me also, in this weird, sick, George Carlin-esque way, it's kind of oddly amusing to be a writer and also watch the entire world just spin out of control around you. It's like this thing you don't want to admit. Yeah,
it's complete madness, and it's almost like the full shock hasn't really even hit us all yet, because it's been a left and a right and a left and a right. The world's sort of punch drunk still, and so the economy just going down in tatters. We haven't really even fully grasped what that's going to be, because no one's back out into the world yet. Not no one, but the majority of people are still sort of hunkered down for the most part, dealing with a pandemic, and then you've got the economic crisis on top of that, and then of course we've got the George Floyd situation, the demonstrations, the protesters, the riots, the looting. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Civil War.
It's Civil War. It's crazy, man. It's Malcolm X said the chickens are going to come home to roost, right? And I didn't really get that expression until I was out of Missouri and I was actually around chickens. But the metaphor is that you got to address problems. If you don't address these problems, all they're going to do is snowball. You know how it is, even in relationships. You get into some stupid, tiny little fight with your partner, and if you don't address that fight, you don't address, make up and talk about it, your next fight will just be bigger, and it'll just snowball into a catastrophic event between just two people. So imagine when it's an empire. We live in this massive, the American empire, and people don't like to use the word empire, because how can you be a democracy in an empire? I don't know, but it's happening, and of course everything is just congealing, because the economic crisis is fueling, more people are going to protests, which I support, and it feels like the system itself is stumbling. And it was stumbling before the George Floyd protests. It was stumbling when they failed to respond accurately to the rise of COVID. It's really just you try to think that the people in power I sometimes think, when I used to be younger, I was really into conspiracy theories. I still am occasionally, but as you get older, you start being like, wow, are these people just inept? You know what I mean? Like, They just don't know what they're doing.
Well, and the thing is, too, you talk about how those things fester and they just build up and then you have to deal with them. But the inadequacies of the systems are when we try to deal with them, when these problems are put out in the open and then you got to get to the solutions, the ability to communicate and have different sides come to some sort of commonality at this point is so difficult because the Democrats and the Republicans just bang heads so hard that even trying to get legislation passed to deal with, police militarization and getting these cops taken care of so that they can't have like 16 prior warnings on their or complaints on their record and get moved around to different precincts or whatever the hell they do with them, like Catholic priests.
Great parallel.
So like we're trying to get legislation passed, but we can't even bring it up to discuss it in the Senate because that would give political points to one side or the other, and they're just like they don't really want solutions. It's like they almost want chaos.
No, they absolutely do. It's a faux pas because I didn't grow up watching pro wrestling, but for some reason a year ago I got really into watching all these wrestling YouTube videos, and you learn about the idea of kayfabe, which is that obviously the outcomes are scripted and the characters they put on are scripted, but you can't let the viewer know because you don't want to break the illusion. And I think that's what we're experiencing because the problem here goes back, it goes towards corporate money and politics, where I said on Facebook the other day, I said the difference between a Republican and a Democrat is a Republican will shoot you from his front porch and a Democrat will have the cops do it for them. And all these Democrats who are coming out and lambasting the police as they should, it gets problematic when you look at their voting history, and they're voting to pass these bills that lets military equipment go into the hands of police departments. Like, why do police departments need to have tanks and Humvees? This is supposed to be America. And it's all this corporate incentive, and corporations are inherently evil by design because they put profit over the soul of humanity. And they own politics. And I don't care how bad Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, how they sneered each other and they talk garbage to each other, because they're both helping each other out with political points. Really, it's like this almost like show. It's like when Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, they're beating each other up in the ring, and then after the show, they get dinner. It's all an illusion, and really the soul of it all is making these corporate entities, the new oligarchs of America, richer. It's heartbreaking. It's I don't know what the solution is. It's wild.
Yeah, it really is, and I think it's going to send the power back to the people in some way, hopefully, eventually, if we can get our acts together, because everyone's, on their own team, got this tribalism going on, everyone's balkanized. So it's like voices got to step up and come up with some solutions, because what you're talking about, what was that, National Defense Authorization Act you're probably talking about with the military Patriot Act, and you talk about these corporations and this industrial machine. I mean, just today it comes out that this remdesivir drug that they're going to try and push on everyone now, it's like cost $8 to make. They're going to push it out there for like $3,000 a pop for these corona patients. And it's just like in the middle of a pandemic, everyone's broke as hell, the world's falling apart, but somehow these medical suppliers, pharmaceutical companies are still like going for broke and just like, we don't even care. We're just going to shove this down your throat, and you're going to like it because you're afraid of the virus.
You're going to take it.
Yeah.
And really what it does, it's just a further weaponization of life. And what they're just doing is they're just cementing the power structure. And what George Carlin once said. The middle class is there to make the upper class richer, and the poor people are there to scare the living hell out of the middle class. But what they're doing now is they're just further weakening these the underclasses. And unfortunately, our politicians are lied. Social media and the internet have been such great tools in organization, but what they've also been great tools to spread propaganda. And we're seeing it done on both sides of the fence it's like I wish people should have known it. Maybe they did. But, when Hitler came to power and he started rolling in, he gave every German citizen a radio. And they were jumping for joy, like, oh, my God, I get to listen to these 4 stations and I get to listen to music. But also you had to listen to his broadcasts as well in every home in Germany. And it's the same thing now in a way. But they weren't nice enough to give us cell phones. We had to buy them ourselves. So it's the propaganda is just fueling this disdain. And it's been going on for years, and it just made people develop this dogma where, like, the Democrats are now seen as this benevolent organization. But like you mentioned, Obama passed the National Defense Authorization Act. And it was that bill that has laid out the way the militarized police force can respond to civilians. It was a Democrat that did that. And, they're just two wings on the same bird, unfortunately. And I wish we were like a European nation where we had minority parties and a better choice, because all we really have is Coke and Pepsi. It doesn't matter what bottle you buy, you're still drinking cola. It's all a mess, Scott.
Yeah, that's for sure. We got the Libertarian and the Green Party, which, they don't even get on the stage at the debates because those are controlled by the Republicans and the Democrats.
Yeah, you got to have 15%. It's literally, what I hope is this. What I hope is that they thought they could get away with the way they've been acting. But they can't. They got caught tripping. The entire world has responded in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. And I do think that singular moment where that man his life was taken, that's going to be the ripple effect that's going to change everything, because they screwed up. The biggest thing what they did is they screwed up is that it's like known, and like the dictator's handbook, right? And one thing you don't want, okay, is to have a large population of people between the ages of 18 and 40 that are unemployed, because then unrest happens, revolution. I'm not even talking about violence. I'm talking about just, people have the time where I'm going to protests and I'm out there and I'm doing stuff, but if I was at work, I'd be stuck at work, because as much as I support these causes, and I think they're the most important, at the end of the day, I got to take care of mine, right? So they have all these people out of work. What did they expect, right? It's like I'm starting to think like my drunk uncle could have ran this whole thing better. Like if I would have been like, hey man, what would you have done? He probably would have had a more accurate view and a more nuanced view on how to handle this than the politicians we have in charge right now. And that's saying something.
Yeah, and it's not even the politicians. It's into the institutions themselves, like the NIH and the CDC. I mean, they've been incompetent from the jump of the coronavirus, too. And even the World Health Organization is spewing out bullshit. Yeah. You got these international bodies. Of course, they're all tied up with the CCP, probably. So, we're dealing with, like, so many haymakers coming at us at once. Like, who's the enemy? Where should our priorities be focused? So we're trying to like handle all this stuff that's been festering here in America, like you're talking about. And then on the other front, we've got like countries like China that are putting out their propaganda. Talking about Hitler earlier. China just got caught with like 50,000 Twitter accounts that were propaganda mouthpieces or soft puppets. So they just shut that down earlier this week. Russia's got theirs doing the same thing on every platform.
Yep.
So it's
and it's the
no one knows where to
it
get the
because,
info from.
And that's what it is. So back during the big civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s and the anti-war movement, the CIA got caught doing something. I don't know if you're aware of COINTELPRO, where they infiltrated all these different peaceful civilian protest movements and news organizations, and what they did was they just twisted everything around. They confused people. They used propaganda to make the movement turn on itself. They did a whole bunch of criminal things. And this isn't even like Alex Jones level. This is like .gov. They have it on the website. You can read what our government did to people, and it works. It really works, because if you change the direction of your anger, then the anger can just blaze off. If a car's going 100 miles an hour and it can't be stopped, but you have a way to change where the road goes, that guy can go 100 miles an hour, but if you shoot him off into a field, it's whatever. It's the same motive in my point of view. And I just wonder, and maybe this is, this should be privileged speaking, but it has something on my mind. What is the effect going to be on the world of letters, on music, on stand-up comedy, on all these different institutions of American art that now are just, who knows when the next poetry reading is going to be, or the next comedy show, unless you're a Christian rock band playing to 10,000 people in Tennessee. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and the art and the poetry and the music are such a critical vein that's so necessary to be a reflection of what's going on, and to then sort of signpost toward the future coming out of this huge wave that we're in right now. So hopefully everyone's sticking to their guns and getting the work done where they are, hunkered down. But I think it's a good point about when is the world going to open back up, and that's another thing too. I'm all for the demonstrations. It's much needed, and everyone can go out there. But I'm also for, if that's allowed, then open the businesses. Let people take their own life into their own hands and make their decisions. Because if the economy crashes too, on top of the pandemic, it's not going to get better. We're looking at a situation that's only going to continue to spiral, and there's just no easy solution. I'm just spitballing.
No, I think this COVID, man, I just don't. I think when COVID first popped off, I think that there were institutions and intelligence agencies that thought this was some sort of biological strike. And it wasn't, or at least now we know it doesn't appear to be, but they laid down the hammer and they locked spots down hardcore. The thing is this, though, is that it's the information's so varied, because I was told, that I was going to be susceptible to this. So I have asthma, okay. I'm a fat guy. I have a type A positive blood type, which is the most affected. I'm a drug user. And I smoke cigarettes. So literally, if it was who's going to get COVID, they just draw a picture of me, okay? And so I came back from Missouri damn, son, I'm about to get coronavirus. It's going to be bad news. A fat dude don't look good with a ventilator in him. The whole situation. I'm having a crisis. And I'm fine. I don't – and, yeah, I'm wearing my mask when I go into businesses, and I'm abiding by these things, and I'm distancing from, my grandmother. After I went to the protest, I haven't seen my grandmother since, because I wanted to give it a couple weeks in case I got sick and in case I incubated. But I don't know. Something's crooked about it, man. I don't know if it's just that they overreacted, which you got to do what you got to do, or not. I don't think the problem with history and even current events is you don't know the truth until hundreds of years go by, when everybody who was involved is dead, and then you're like, oh, that's what happened. When until then, God knows.
Yeah, God, and then at that point, who the hell knows who wrote the history at that point, because whoever came out on top is the one spilling the beans about it all. But yeah, man,
always
they rile up the hysteria. That's something that I'm worried about too, because even when we come out of this, the shock to the collective consciousness of being afraid of your daily life, like how do you re-normalize after that? I guess that's why they keep talking about the new normal, trying to hammer that into people's heads.
I hate that term, though.
Things will never go back to normal. You must adapt.
The new normal, and it's like people are like fetishizing it almost. Like, listen, I can understand you live at home with an elderly parent or an immunocompromised person. I get it. You got to do what you got to do to protect the ones you love, right? But there's so many people in my generation who think that, like, they're like, I'm not going to go outside for months after, even if they say it's better. It's the new normal, masks and gloves everywhere. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, is it that you want it to be this way? Is it that, your life doesn't bear much excitement, so this is the peak of excitement in your life? Or is it fear? I just hate the new normal because it seems real propaganda-y when they keep flashing it. The new normal, the new normal. I'm like, how do you know? How do you know it's the new normal? How do you know this isn't a one-time thing? And maybe they know. Listen, I'm a dirty foot poet, okay? I'm not saying I have any sort of secret knowledge. I'm just a guy who reads a lot on the internet. So maybe they do. Maybe these people have documents that this is going to be an annual thing, much like our flu. I don't know. My sister works in the hospital, one of the big hospitals over here in New Jersey, and she has been keeping me up to date on everything. And there was a point when she was just telling me how tragic it was and COVID, but what nobody talks about, Scott, is also the amount of domestic violence that has skyrocketed, where at one point she was seeing whole hospital and tents outside full of patients for COVID, and now that's dropped down. But now it's children and women who have been beaten by abusive partners who are locked down in quarantine, and that's something that I haven't seen very many news articles about.
Yeah, it seems like the side effects of what the lockdown has caused, they don't really report it much because maybe they don't want to admit that it was a problem to begin with. But like you're talking about, the domestic violence, the amount of suicides that have happened already that are just like orders of magnitude greater than usual. All of the people that didn't go in and have their normal diagnosis for checkups at the hospital who have now contracted cancer, don't even know it yet probably because they didn't get their screening. So that's backed up for 3 months. So it's just, not to mention like the third world countries that depend on these other nations for food and for supplies, and the supply chains are breaking down there. Millions of people are going to die of starvation. The UN just said it might be 50% more this year. It's just
Jesus.
There's so many things that trigger off of each other that there's no time to like game plan all that in the middle of a emergency when it's first happening. But like as time goes by, you got to start factoring those things in and realizing like, there's got to be a better way to get through this.
What do you think about I've seen a lot of poets that are putting out COVID poems. There was a backlash on Twitter, which there often is.
About anything?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, listen, like, not even, what I always say is this: like, I don't hop on bandwagons unless it's against Nazis. I got a personal vendetta. So if you're a Nazi or racist, I want to hop on the thing. I came up in punk rock, man, and back in the mid-aughts, if a Nazi or a skinhead walked in, like, he wasn't politely walked out, if you know what I mean. But yeah, the thing is this, like, it's interesting because at first, when I first started seeing these COVID poems, part of me was like, man, these people are capitalizing off this tragedy. And then I took a step. I was like, no, I feel like we give our own moments more criticism and more critical thought than the past, because how many people were writing poems during the Black Plague that became important foundations of the Renaissance era, right? And like stories. And so I think it's interesting. I haven't written any COVID poems myself because I'm not the kind of, I don't write poems when they're hot. Usually if something happens to me or I have an idea or I see something or I experience something, I'll write down a couple of notes and then I'll wait maybe a couple weeks, a month, a couple months, and I'll write. But I just can't, when I write things and it's hot and it's current, I feel like I don't get to tackle the empathetic part of it, where when things get cold, I could step back and look on things with more nuance. So it's an interesting, I haven't really read them yet. I just seen covers. I know Alien Buddha did something cool, but it's interesting, it's poet's going to find a way to poet, It doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the sense of it where people are just, they want to do something. Like, everyone's locked up and has nowhere to go, so especially if you're an artist, your mind's just going 1,000 miles per hour all the time anyway, so dealing with the moment at hand, I can see where people want to do that, but definitely get your point, too, of like, wanting to ruminate on a subject for a while, let it roll around in the head, try to get some, a more firm grasp on what's going down.
And that's just the way I do things. I came up in a weird thing, and I don't, I write all the time, but I don't publish as often as I should. But I think that's also been one of my strengths too, because I am super strict on what I let go on the internet. Back when I first started, a couple of years ago, 2015, 2016, I would just post anything, right? I would just write a stupid haiku on my phone and be like, that's funny, and post it. And then what's haunted me is I thought that if I post it, if I delete it off the internet, it's gone. But then people got screenshots, people have saved it, so it haunts you forever. Right. So like I've got a demo tape I put out in 2010 with my shitty punk band that I have tried to get off the internet for a decade now, because I just don't want anybody to hear it, right? But it's there forever, right? So, things are things, and I good power to them, right? If you want to go ahead and you could, there's a couple magazines do a poet response contest where people write poems about current events, and people will knock out killer poems about a headline that came out that morning. And power to them. I just can't do it.
What is your basic style when it comes to writing? What kind of projects do you have going on at the moment? How have you been writing here during the last few weeks? That's all this is going on?
Well, so what happened is I was in a residency for a year, and towards the end of that year, I put out a chapbook called Don't Call It a Relapse by Punk Provincial Press out of Bell, Missouri. It came out, but it was like the books were made, they looked great, okay? And then my entire life completely fell apart around me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everything's went to shit. And by the time I got my stuff together, right, I figured my own baggage out. The coronavirus hit. And I felt weird pushing my chapbook during the coronavirus. So I'm still sitting on this one. I actually just got the copies back. I got the book, and I was moving all over. I was passing around the country for a little bit, so I had to go find my box of books. So I finally have Don't Call It a Relapse, which I'll be pushing again. I'm doing a I don't want to announce the title yet, but I'm doing a split with Victor Clevenger, Jason Reberg, and John Dorsey. It'll be a 4-way split, and that'll be coming out in August. It's we actually have I don't know what to call it, a band or a group. It's called the New Prophets of Poetic Discord. And it comes from a line from someone me and you both know who called me a new prophet, okay? So we have that. And we after all that happened, and I was joking about it, and I mentioned that this certain editor from Georgia called me a new prophet, and everybody was laughing. So he came up with this poetry group, the New Prophets, right?
Yeah.
And it's like NU, like new metal. And we're finally put out a book on that.
That's awesome.
I have a full length coming out from Luchador Press, which is an imprint of Spartan out in Missouri. And that'll be out sometime in the fall. I'm only 2 years past my deadline, but it's one of those things where, like, it's my first full length, right? Like, I've got 4 chapbooks out now, plus a split with Esno Martin. And your first full length book is, like, really important, you know? It's like that first, like, real, like, here's 50 poems, here's 60 poems. So I wanted to wait on it, and I wanted to make it the best I can. So I really just pissed off my publisher because he's been waiting 2 years for it. But I think I'm ready to finally get it over to him. So I got that going on. I'm working on a comic with a friend. He's an artist friend. It's called The Wizard of Bell, Missouri. It's about my experiences in the rural Midwest over the last year, which has been interesting. You know, I don't want to comment. I can't comment publicly about some of the aspects of the residency I was in now. However, I could write a fictional book about it. And pretty much I didn't have the same experience a lot of other residents did, where it was a bunch of different properties in the Midwest. And there was a couple that were more rural, and the rest were in this little town. And there were poets and artists and musicians from around the country that are given free lodging and food. And the only requirement that they say is you have to produce art, right? So most of them, you know, they're stuck-up elitists from big cities who have come in the past. And not all of them. I got a lot of good friends there. But they sit amongst themselves, and they kick it back, and they spend time, but that's not who I am. So I really just spent the last year partying and traveling and shooting guns and riding in the back of pickup trucks and just causing a bunch of havoc in this small rural town. So really it's I don't know if you know the poet Sean Pavey from Kansas, but he's out there now. He's finishing up a month residency, and he told me, he texted me, he was like, man, he said, your name is whispered around Bell like some sort of like myth or a legend. And I left my mark there, you know. They're all, those kind of towns are really suspect of outsiders, especially liberal folks from the coast. But, you know, I ended up having this weird conglomeration of people that would just follow me. You know, I had like my poet and artist friends, and we had some artists from different cities that would come out and kick it with us. And I had these like group of dudes who were between the ages of like 18 and 30, just regular kids from the area who just thought we were cool. So like I'd have parties with like 90 kids at my house. You know what I mean? Like just complete mayhem. and like real American, like it was a good time. I was a terrible, terrible artist in residence, okay? Like, I definitely wasn't the best, meaning I'm not good at following rules, Scott, you know?
Right.
But I had a good time, and I got a lot of content out of it. Like, I'm working on a novel right now, and it's just, now that I'm a couple months out, I can look back on the last year and be like, Jesus Christ, people let me be like that, you know, like, and I thought I burned my bridges. I thought when I left there, you know, I was like, those people hate me. They think I'm some sort of lunatic, and they don't. I get calls every day, when you coming back, you know? So
right
I got a lot to work on now.
Yeah, man, you're probably a breath of fresh air. Like, get all the academics coming through there, like, you know,
yeah,
writing their poems, and you got a wild man coming out and turning the place into Owl Creek, Wes Thompson style.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Pretty much. I'm not gonna lie to you.
So you talked about that split coming out with Clevenger and Dorsey. You've done some traveling with those two, haven't you?
Oh yeah, a lot actually. It's cool, man, because Dorsey, who has become my friend, you know, I hung out with Dorsey a lot. Many a time have me and him shared some fried chicken. But he was the poet that I really started discovering his poetry. It really blew me away. Like, his poems are just completely amazing. They're working man poems, and that captivated me. So when I first met him, I was at the Kansas City Poetry Throwdown back in 2016. We was really, I really was like, wow. And I've traveled with him a lot, and we've done some shows. I was at residency with him because he's still up there. So it's cool. And Clevenger's just a sweet guy, you know. Like, he's a great poet, and he's an awesome guy to hang out with. And so we've done some definite road stuff. And that's fun, you know. That's the thing that I made a deal with my fiance that I was going to get some time off the road, and I was going to, like, not settle down because that's not in my blood, but just, you know, get some stuff back together and maybe focus on acquiring a homestead or a solid place. And now haven't been on the road since October of last year. Was the last time I went on tour. And I'm missing it, man. I'm missing the idea of, like, screw it, I got $26 in my pocket. We got half a tank of gas. Let's see if we can make it to Toledo. Hopefully we'll sell enough chapbooks, and if not, I guess we'll figure out something in the morning. Who's letting us sleep on your couch tonight? You know, like, I definitely miss that kind of travel, and I don't even know when that'll be a feasible reality again.
Yeah, who knows when things are going to open back up fully. I mean, your guess is as good as mine at this point. But hopefully it's not too far down the road, because those adventures are what life is really made of. And damn, dude, this hour is flown by.
Yeah.
About five minutes left in the show. Usually I like to get a lot more questions in, but just shooting the shit about the state of the world has been awesome. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Great to be on here.
Yeah, man. I like to get some of this stuff off my chest. First time in a while I've been able to do that, so it's been cool, man. But there are like 5 minutes left. You got a couple of poems maybe you can hit us with to send the show out?
Yeah, man. Let me read two poems for you. This poem's called One for Corey. I heard your brother is down in the boonies, living in chicken shacks, hooked on the same shit that took the air from your lungs and left another son without a father. Will it ever end? Will the damned be forsaken? Will you call me again at 3 a.m. looking to score? The other night at McDonough's pub, I saw the old crew, and we talked about you. And we never talked about you when you died. We just let it haunt us. The boys are looking for more, to green grasses and other places that don't stink of poverty and death. The Garden State has more poppies than orchids. All the roses I've known have bled and broken trying to make it out of the concrete. Sometimes I smile, hoping that somewhere in celestial solace, you are on a stage that isn't in drug court, that you're singing and free again, that you finally learned the guitar. Corey, I pray that somewhere you are 18 forever, that beautiful smile never leaves your face, and you never know pain again. And let me find one more. Thank you, man. This poem's called Working Class Anxiety. Sundays are for picking what we can live without. They cut my hours at work again, so something's getting shut off. If we eat one big meal in the afternoon, I could steal something at work and we'll be okay. The internet and cable are going. We'll have to borrow the neighbors. My feet are calloused and raw. I haven't had socks in months. These rubber soles are holy. My feet tear at the asphalt. I have working class anxiety, living paycheck to paycheck. I want to be a good man, but I have to make sure we're taken care of. I watch the armored truck park in front of the store, and I dream of adventure, of wrestling the guard to the ground, breaking away with more money than anyone in my neighborhood has ever seen. I'd buy us a good apartment in a good part of town, buy my mom a car so she can get to work, buy my little brother an education, take us out of this cycle that turns hardworking people into criminals and addicts and mass cards. The truck pulls away, with it my hopes. I think of all the working class casualties, all those boys with good in their hearts serving mandatory minimum sentences, all those families stuck on welfare. The American dream is only for those who can afford it. The rest of us sleep dreamless. With empty pockets, we find our vices and use anything to get us to tomorrow. And that tomorrow feels like today. But we all have some big fantasy. I guess we all have an armored truck. Boom.
Hell yeah,
Thanks,
man. Nice piece. And apropos for the times, for sure.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, man. Where can people find you on social media and find out more about your work?
I don't have a website at the moment because I dropped the ball and let my domain name lapse. And I'm currently in a battle with another Damian Rucci in Argentina. We're sorting it out. So my Twitter is it's twitter.com/Damian Rucci, DAMIANRUCCI. And Facebook, just look up Damian Rucci. I'm always on there posting stuff that gets people angry. So you'll find me. Yeah,
and everybody needs to go check out some of your rants. Hope that you bring those back soon, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, brother. Listen, it's been a real pleasure, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Really enjoyed it. Welcome back anytime. Take care, my friend.
Take care, man.
All right, everyone. So go connect with Damian there on Twitter. Go check out some of his books. Thanks for tuning in tonight. If you enjoyed the show, please do share the link. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be back here next Monday, as always, 8 Eastern. Until then, Selah.